What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, quiet weekend, busy Monday morning. Plenty of news coming about in the last couple of hours. Excited to dive into it all, including some quarterback talk. A wide receiver who may be on his way out of Pittsburgh. We'll give our thoughts on that. And then the most recent mock draft that has the Pittsburgh Steelers making a very interesting move, I would say. We'll dive into that plus a little bit more. It is a beautiful day in the Berg. Snowed. When was that? Friday? Saturday? Let me tell you this. I closed the blinds like during the podcast because the light comes in and nobody could see my face. I didn't open the blind on Friday, continued to work all day long, left my house at about, 6:30 at night because I was going to the gym, walked outside, there's 6 inches of snow on the ground. I was like, it was sunny and beautiful. When we did the podcast, I told you how nice it was outside. Had no idea that it snowed even a centimeter of an inch, but it did. How you feel, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to my brother this weekend, and someone asked us, like, oh, did you guys get a lot of snow this weekend? And I was like, yeah. He was like, no, we didn't really at all. I was like, what are you talking about? I just stepped in like 6 inches of snow and I stepped outside of my door to come here. So I don't know what he was talking about at all.
Me and him were on the same page. We hermited ourselves inside, didn't go outside one time. That's just what I really had no idea. I didn't know it was supposed to start. I didn't know it was supposed to end. And then my fiance comes home at like 9 o'clock. She was at a family party or something. She called me at 9. She was like, hey, I'm going to see how far I could drive, but you might have to come pick me up because it's pretty crazy outside. I was like, what's going on? Just struck us out of nowhere. That's classic Pittsburgh. I won't lie to you. I had plans to golf this week.
Oh, how'd those go?
Yeah, they're not looking good. Unless everything, it's supposed to be like 60 degrees tomorrow. Unless just totally dries it up by Wednesday. Not looking like a good day to golf on Thursday morning. But we'll see what happens. Either way, how you feel, my friend? How was the weekend? Parents were in town.
Parents were in town. It was nice. Went to a museum, ate lots of good food.
Nice.
All good stuff. Yeah, I love having the parents in town. Parents are empty. Parents have been empty nesters for a while, and I like that they feel licensed to just get out of home and come visit me whenever they feel like it. Whenever they feel just bored at home, they just come to Pittsburgh. It's pretty nice.
That's actually that's like the dream. You know what I mean? You don't have to. It's no longer like, oh, I gotta schedule places to go home. It's like, no, they're coming here, and we're gonna have a good time in a good old city. Even though your parents are from somewhere cool, so that's true. That's also cool. But that's cool. What museum did you go to?
Just the Carnegie Museum in Oakland.
Awesome.
But it was they hadn't been there, so it was nice.
Yeah, that's hands down my favorite museum in Pittsburgh. I'll go there every week. You know what I mean? Like every time people come to Pittsburgh, I'm like, we should go to the Natural History Museum. It's just super cool.
Place is huge. Like, you could kill so much time there. Like, you could kill multiple days there and not even, and still have stuff to do. Dude,
and anybody coming to Pittsburgh, nobody doesn't want to see real sized dinosaurs. Like, that just, you know what I mean? Nobody's like, I don't want to go look at fossils of dinosaurs. No, that's awesome. Glad you had a good time. Glad the parents had a good time. Let's talk about some Pittsburgh Steelers football. We'll start with the quarterback position, a position we're going to talk about all offseason and have talked about all offseason. This one's a little bit different. According to reports from Jerry Dulac, there's some quote-unquote internal division about where the Pittsburgh Steelers are headed with their quarterback situation, whether or not they should give Kenny Pickett the immediate shot to start, or if Mason Rudolph should remain the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers if he resigns. Then Tim Benz of the Tribune Review went on to continue that thought, saying that sources have told him that there is quote-unquote a contingent, and that Mason Rudolph won over the locker room, particularly in the wide receiver room, meaning that not everybody believes that Kenny Pickett should get a preferred chance to start over Mason Rudolph in 2024. I feel like outside of Mike Tomlin, maybe, Art Rooney probably, not many people had the thought of everybody's gung-ho, Kenny Pickett should be the guy in 2024 at the end of the season. Did you have different thoughts? And hearing that there is some internal division, especially the things we've talked about this offseason, I mean, does this shock you at all? And how divided do you think things are?
Well, this doesn't really shock me at all that there is a group of there's a part of the Steelers organization that really believes in Mason Rudolph. I mean, he has earned that belief. He played
Yes.
well over those final 4 games, and I think he deserves, if he stays in Pittsburgh, as much as a chance to start as anyone. But I think we're also kind of overplaying the extent to which Kenny Pickett is. Like when they say preferred starter going into, I'm doing air quotes, preferred starter going into training camp, like what does that really mean? You know, like does he take the first QB1 reps? Maybe. But I think as time wears on, like it's not like the Steelers would sacrifice any of their long-term success or give him, I think, preferential treatment if he wasn't playing well. And I think that's the thing that people are a little hung up on when they hear that, you know, Kenny Pickett enters training camp or enters the offseason as QB1. I think they assume that means that he's going to be the opening day starter, and that doesn't necessarily mean that. So, you know, I'm not shocked that people like Mason Rudolph and want him to get a chance as well. And I think he will, though. And I think, you know, so this report doesn't really shock me much. And especially because, as I think Benz points out in his article, Deontay Johnson at least said at the end of the season that he would prefer Mason Rudolph as a starter over Kenny Pickett. And I don't, so this doesn't really surprise me at all, but I also think this just kind of plays into what we already knew, which is that, you know, Kenny's going to get a chance, Mason's going to get a chance, and I don't read much into how we're ordering quarterbacks on February 19th with training camp still, 3 months away, more than that,
4 or 5 months away. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into that right now. And to say that there's a contingent of the Steelers that believe in Mason and want him to start doesn't really surprise me at all.
I agree. I think it's more about where that contingent comes from. Is it the players? Is it because when I read Jerry's, I guess, report, it was a quarterback breakdown, and in that breakdown was the report. I took it as the front office. There was management that was not totally pleased with the way that, you know, people were looking at it right now, some of them. But I didn't look at it like, oh, there's an issue, like people are yelling across the room. I just took it as half the front office is like, Mason looked really good, and half the front office was like, yeah, but Kenny's our guy. You know, we got to stick with Kenny. Ben's is when it comes to the players and saying like chances are it's in the wide receiver room. That to me sparked a little bit, I want to say interest, but not, you know, there's no surprise. There's nothing in there that says, you know, we should be worried about this or this is going to blow up into something big and there's going to be all these issues. I just took it as exactly what you said. Diontae said it at the end of the year. I remember clear as day in the Buffalo Bills locker room, said that he is pushed for Mason for a long time and he hopes that he gets the job in next season. And I was like, well, that was clear as day. You know, George Pickens had his best stretch of games with Mason Rudolph. The offense worked better with Mason. Like, none of that surprises me. These guys had success with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. They're looking for the guy that had success with Mason with their quarterback. And that's just how, like, that's how players are going to roll. Nobody's, like, I'm telling you right now, nobody in a locker room is saying the worst guy, the lesser of two should be the guy that's out there just because we like him. Doesn't mean that they like him less. They just understand that this is a business. This business is about winning. And Mason Rudolph is a dude that gave them a really good opportunity to win. I mean, I don't think any of it was necessarily a surprise. And I don't think that the division is as big as maybe some headlines are making it seem. I think it's just exactly where it was at the end of the season.
And I don't think that division is necessarily, like you said, people screaming across the room at each other. Like I think it's more a matter of opinion that's going to play out when these guys actually are able to step onto the field. Guys are able to throw balls. They put pads on and actually, you know, play football. Like I said, like we're on February 19th. Like how we order our quarterbacks right now does not concern me one bit.
No.
And the other thing is, like, Mason Rudolph might not even be here, you know, next, like by the time training camp rolls around. So this might just be a moot point all around, is that, you know, this might not even be a competition that we have to really consider seriously by the time the summer comes here.
I agree. And that, you know, that kind of steers us to another direction here is, you know, everybody's talking about the quarterback position. That's the biggest news. It's going to remain the biggest news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think anybody, like Mike Tomlin wants it to be Kenny Pickett. Art Rooney wants it to be Kenny Pickett. Omar probably doesn't care because he didn't draft Kenny Pickett, but obviously financially, that's like it all works out better if Kenny Pickett is your dude. But I don't think anybody is super, it's got to be Kenny Pickett. It's Kenny Pickett or nobody. I think at this point in Kenny Pickett's career and the Steelers' career and with the sense of urgency, and I think this is the first time the Steelers feel we have really messed up because we have not put our foot forward, our best foot forward. I think the Steelers have gone through a rebuild because you got to remember last year, the year before that, we're talking about the Steelers are, they're a slow rebuild. They're a team that is succeeding more than where their talent level is. Now it's the Steelers are succeeding less than where their talent level is. And I think they understand that. They understand they're on the other side of the life cycle where now they could go win championships. So they're not going to let the quarterback position kind of get in their way. I think that when it comes to, replacements for Mason Rudolph and the whole Kenny Pickett situation, everybody's asking me. I mean, I was over the weekend. I had, I don't know, like 10 people. It was wild how many people I ran into who were, hey, what's going on? What's going to happen? Is Mason going to be the starter? Or is Justin Fields going to be the starter? Are they getting Kirk Cousins? I was like, I have no idea. It's February. If I had to guess right now, Kenny Pickett's the starter. Mason Rudolph's the number 2. I was like, but that's going to change in a couple of weeks. And I think that's where we stand currently is the Steelers are wanting, they're in plan A. They are in phase 1 of their quarterback situation. They want it to be Mason Rudolph versus Kenny Pickett. How that turns out, we'll find out in July. But as of right now, they want it to be Kenny Pickett versus Mason Rudolph. If that changes, that's where people get kind of tied up with the whole, they're not going to go get Kirk Cousins. I mean, Dulac was saying in his report that the Steelers are not interested in going and getting a number 1 and paying a number 1, blah, blah, blah. As of right now, where the Steelers stand, it is quarterback 1, Kenny Pickett, quarterback 1B, Mason Rudolph. I expect Mason Rudolph to sign either with the Pittsburgh Steelers or with another team like 1, 2, 3 days max into free agency. He's not sitting around. There's no way he's going to be like, well, I'll hold out for the best opportunity. Money's decreasing by the second every day that passes, and he is not not with a new team. And if teams want him, like if somebody calls him and says, hey, we're going to be a starter, he's not like, I'm going to contemplate I'm going to really think about this. You know what I mean? Like somebody's signing him within the first 72 hours of free agency. If he goes elsewhere, that's when I think the Pittsburgh Steelers plan B comes into action. That's when a splash can be made. That's when you start considering a Justin Fields. You start considering a Russell Wilson. I still think Kirk Cousins is so expensive that you just do not go and get him. But I think you start looking at plan B then. But I don't think the Steelers, I think the internal division kind of just shows you the Steelers are not 100% in on Kenny Pickett. And if plan A goes awry, they're going to look for plan B. And I don't know if they have a plan B yet, but it'll come up in or in that time frame. And that's when we can start thinking about, the big splash, the big changes at the quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it shouldn't surprise anyone when you say you don't think the Steelers are 100% in on Kenny.
No.
I think that's been clear from the jump. It's not. I don't know. It's just Art Rooney has said it very plainly. Mike Tomlin has said it very plainly. Like Kenny's got to prove something this year,
yes.
And I think Kenny knows that. I think the team knows that. I don't think that's a surprise at all.
No.
And I think you're right that like I think it's just interesting to kind of hear out loud like, yeah, Mason Rudolph is plan A, that's like their guy.
Yep.
And then, making one of these big flashy splashes is kind of plan B. I think that might sound concerning to some people. I think there are some people who think Mason Rudolph is a little unexciting, but I still think that I think they want the guy that they're comfortable with. And I think when Dulac says they're not looking for a QB1, that kind of means we're not looking for another number 1 from outside the organization. That means they're not doing that right now.
Yep.
And like you said, they're still in a certain phase of their offseason plans and their quarterback plans specifically. It's going to take some time before once the first domino falls, which is really Mason Rudolph. That's when everything else kind of falls into place. Like their plan for Kenny, their plan for maybe bringing in another quarterback, their plan for the draft. That all is going to kind of settle in once you figure out what Mason Rudolph is going to be able to give you.
Exactly.
And so if he goes somewhere else, then you can kind of make your plan from there. If he decides to stay here, you can kind of go from there. But everything else kind of hinges on what he's doing.
Exactly. And that is like, that's when it comes to, a lot of conversations and then people shutting down conversations. And then, right now there's nothing it's February 19th. We are in a there's nothing that can happen. There's not a thing that could happen. It's just a bunch of talk that will happen for the next month. In a month, February, I want to say, or March, I want to say 14th is the opening of free agency, somewhere around there. when that happens, that is when the conversation actually begins. The Steelers either, boom, we got our guy. Okay, we got to look for somebody else. But to sit around, like, we have nobody's got any idea. It's just all these trains of thoughts. And yeah, the quarterbacks, obviously the Steelers are not looking at an outside quarterback right now because they want Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph decides whether or not they will be looking for an outside quarterback come March 15th, 16th, 10th, whenever the news breaks that he's either come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers or heading elsewhere. But before then, just like you said, it's February 19th. Nothing much could go on. Guys, we have gear, new merchandise from AST to Muth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. Let's talk about another position here. Deontay Johnson has made headlines this morning. A bit of a shocker. Kind of came out of nowhere. Didn't see it coming. The Breakfast with Ben's podcast with Tim Benz, making all the headlines this morning. Tim Benz is with Mark Madden, talked about Deontay Johnson and the future of Deontay Johnson, where he stands as he enters the last year of his 3-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's set to make $15.8 million this season. According to Mark Madden, the future is in doubt, saying, quote, I had the quote, I lost the quote. I'm finding out. Quote, I've heard Deontay Johnson's future is in doubt. I've heard whispers he plans to have a hold-in again like he did 2 years ago because we're going to the last year of his contract and he's going to make noise over Pickett at quarterback. I'm not a Diontae fan. I think he's mediocre and they pay them way too much. But if you're going to get rid of him because he's not a Pickett guy, I mean, come on. I don't, you could kind of scratch the back end of that quote. I kind of felt like Madden, which is, this is typical. You listen to Mark Madden, this is typical Mark Madden. I'm taking a jab at a player, not actually doing true reporting here. But the first half of that, the future is in doubt of Deontay Johnson. Thinks that he's going to hold in. I mean, do you think there's any face value there? You think that the future of Deontay Johnson is in doubt with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I mean, I think it's in doubt to the extent that his contract's almost up, but I don't think the Steelers are shopping him or looking to get rid of him anytime soon. I mean,
no.
They weren't looking to get rid of him after going without a touchdown for how long was it?
Full season.
Was it? Yeah, full season. I don't know why they'd look to get rid of him at this point. I mean, I think he's not going to be worth $18 million like he was when he signed his last contract, but I still think that he's a quality receiver. I think that in a new offensive system, he could be even more productive than he was last year, which was pretty darn good, especially given the kind of quarterback play that he had to deal with.
Yep.
So I don't really buy this a whole lot. I'm sure everyone's just kind of, I mean, like I said, it's February 19th. I think everyone's just kind of keeping all their options on the table. I think this is what you've got to do when you're a receiver of Deontay Johnson's caliber, when you've got a contract that's about to expire. You've got to think about all your options. You got to think about how to maximize your value. So I don't know. To me, this just kind of reads as pretty standard, conversation between a player and an agent saying, look, what do I have to do this offseason? What do I have to be prepared for? How do I get myself into the best position this offseason? Knowing that I'm going into a contract year, that this is a pretty critical year for me. How do I protect myself? And so I don't think this means, Deontay's a bad teammate or he's looking to undermine the Steelers at all, or even that he's really trying to undermine Kenny Pickett in that way either. I think it's just kind of Diontae looking out for himself, which isn't, which I guess, sounds bad when you say it out loud, but it's what everyone else in this league does too.
It's what, it's a contract year player. Here's the thing though, is when it comes to the whole hold-in thing, I feel like that's a first contract type of situation, like like Chris Jones, I think, is the biggest example. The guy did not hold in the year before his contract was over. He held in the year his contract was over. He held in the year that, okay, I got to get paid this is it. We're working with the franchise tag. What are we doing here? Sign me to a contract. That's when you hold in at this point in your career. Nobody's sitting around their third contract going, you know what? If it's the last year of my deal that I agreed upon, this is the year that I'm going to hold in. Like that just doesn't right. That's very irregular in the NFL at this point. Deontay Johnson's a guy that, I mean, even when he did, like he was part of the, I think that's the biggest thing is I think this is trying to make a fuss out of something that isn't worth making a fuss about. Diontae didn't make a big deal out of the first contract. He did it exactly how he was supposed to do it. He did exactly how TJ Watt did it, and Minkah Fitzpatrick did it, and Alex Highsmith did it. A typical Pittsburgh Steelers, do not go get yourself hurt during training camp when you are a player that does not need to be out there the entire first 2 weeks of training camp. Like that's just not, it's not safe. It's not smart. It's not good for your wallet. And you could ask every coach there. I mean, I still remember good old Keith Butler. Shout out to my favorite defensive coordinator of all time when it came to speaking to the media. He straight up said, he said, if I was TJ, I wouldn't be anywhere near the field. There's no way I'd be out there. TJ could go as far away from football as possible until he gets paid. And that is exactly how players should handle it. And that's how coaches view handling it, as long as you do it in a respectful manner. I think he did it in a respectful manner. When it comes to this one, you're getting paid $15.8 million a season. I don't think anybody's complaining about that. I don't think Diontae's sitting around going, I think I'm worth 17, especially when he realizes his next contract is not going to be $18 million a year. He's 20. Right. He's about to be 28 years old by the end of the 2024 season. He's a guy that he's going to get a 15, per year deal, something in that neighborhood, but he's not looking for 25. Like he's not that type of guy. And I think he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. And if he doesn't want to stay in Pittsburgh, go ball out this season and go get a big deal somewhere else next year. But it just doesn't, it doesn't seem like a likely situation that Diontae is going to make a big deal and kind of blow up the media and all this stuff. And then just be like, you know what? I think it's time to go. Diontae has not shown any of that. You know what I mean? He is, people have issues with Deontay Johnson, and Deontay Johnson has certainly made some mistakes in his career, as all players do. But when it comes to being a leader and standing up and doing things to just be the bigger person in that moment, he handles those situations better than almost anybody. And I don't think you could take that away from him.
I was going to say, I think Diontae has, and this is only anecdotal. I don't have any like hard evidence behind this, but I feel like Diontae has a reputation for being kind of a diva, I guess, that for lack of a better term. And I don't really know where it comes from. Like I guess it comes from his hold in before his last contract, but I don't know.
After TJ Watt held in the year before, and Minkah Fitzpatrick held in the year before that one.
Right, and I know he had that issue with the fumble earlier in the year, but he also like immediately after took responsibility for it instead, and like didn't make the same mistake again. Like I don't know. I feel like Diontae gets a bad rap, and I was not a fan of him. I guess last year, my first year on the covering the Steelers and kind of paying close attention to him, I wasn't a huge fan, but I don't know. I've kind of done a 180 on Diontae. I think he's a good guy. He's a valuable receiver. I don't buy that he would create some kind of circus over a contract that, like you said, he agreed to, and then afterwards he knows that this kind of isn't, his next deal isn't going to be the same as his first deal was.
Exactly. That's exactly. Look I think Deontay's got a bad rep as well. I've always been a very big fan of Deontay Johnson, like a ginormous. I think he handles things. I think he's a wide receiver. We talked to Calvin Austin. That's just part of the DNA. You know what I mean? Like that's just who they are. Born that way. The second that you're like, I have the urge to make a cryptic tweet, that you're going to be an NFL wide receiver. Like it should just all click in your head in that moment. Diontae handles that stuff so well. He always comes back and does the right thing. He had one bad year, drops, and people immediately were just like, this guy stinks. He's the worst player in the whole world. I like Deontay Johnson. I think he continues to be a very valuable wide receiver. Since he signed that contract, he's gone through Mitch Trubisky, rookie Kenny Pickett, second-year Kenny Pickett, who might have got worse than first-year Kenny Pickett, and then Mason Rudolph for 3.5 games, or 4 games, whatever. I mean, like the guy he's not had a fair shot to come out here and be like, all right, we're going to do big things and earn a boatload of money. That just, he stuck it out with some really bad quarterback play, the worst offensive coordinator the NFL has seen in a long, long time. And he's made the most. He's held his head strong, and he hasn't created a bunch of negative news. And I think that, I don't see, if it was if it was the other way around, and I'm not going to name drop people here, but if this was a mid-season, wide receivers making a bunch of splash because they want to get paid, blah, 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 Diontae wouldn't be the name that I think would be it. I think, you got some guys in the past. AB's made headlines all weekend. He would have been a name to watch. Chase Claypool would have been a name to watch. Deontay's never fallen into that group, and I think that he just gets a bad rep. So no, I don't expect it to happen. Do you think Diontae gets another contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
My gut says yes. I mean, if his contract was up this year, I feel like I'd re-sign him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all kind of contingent on what he does this year. And I mean, that's a cop-out answer. But as of right now, I mean, I feel like if he does what he did last year, I would say yes, he does. If he's at worst as good as he was last year, as productive as he was last year, I should say, I feel like he does come back. Yeah.
I agree. I think the only way is if there's a fall off and you see, are we going to, I think he needs to boost some of his numbers. I think last year was like 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. Not, you know what I mean? Not like you could find another one of those. So you need to boost those numbers a little bit, but that all depends on the quarterback play. If Kenny Pickett is the starting quarterback and he stinks all season long, and then Ryan Tannehill is the starting quarterback, he stinks all year long. Mason Rudolph's the quarterback, he stinks all year. Like, there's nothing you could do there. You know what I mean? Like, when all your wide receivers are finishing with 800 yards, that's just as good as your quarterback's allowing them to be. So if all his numbers bump up a little bit, I think it's an easy yes. You pay him $15 million a year. Maybe Kenny's your dude, and you got a couple of years to not worry about contracts, and you could get through it. But yeah, I don't think Deontay's going anywhere until his next contract. Then he's 30 years old. Then you move on. But until then, easy guy to keep on. Easy guy to keep around. All right, last thing I want to talk about here: the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, we're entering draft season. Lots going on. A lot of mock drafts. A lot of moves. A lot of expectations when it comes to the Steelers and who they will select in the first round of the NFL draft. Here you go with the new one. Pro Football Network's Ian Cummings, who does a phenomenal job during draft season, but with this one, maybe some question marks. He dropped a 7-round mock draft and has the Pittsburgh Steelers bumping from 20 to 17, moving up 3 spots, exactly what they did a year ago to go get Broderick Jones. This time, they're going to get J.C. Latham out of Alabama, selecting another offensive tackle back-to-back years in a row. They swap their 20th pick, their 3rd round pick, number 84, and a 2025 4th round pick for pick 17 with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and a 6th round pick in 2025. I mean, you checked out the mock draft. You saw everything that was going on. You got some thoughts. What are they?
Man, that's a hefty price tag for an offensive tackle and a deep offensive to move up for an offensive tackle and a deep offensive tackle draft, which I think is my biggest concern. That's just so I believe the trade proposed was Steelers get the number 17th pick. Yep. They get a 2025 6th round pick. Jags get the number 20 overall pick, the number 84 overall pick, and then a 2025 4th round pick. Man, even getting a pick back, that just feels like a lot to give up. Latham might be good, but I don't know if he's worth giving up 3 different draft picks to get to him, especially when a guy like Armarius Mims is available.
Yes.
Let me look at the other names. There was another one that Cooper DeJean is available. Kool-Aid McKinstry is still available in this mock draft, like at 20, at past 20. So they just miss out on Jackson Powers Johnson in this one. He was picked, I believe, 16 by the Seahawks. So,
yes.
That's a bummer, but like, there's still guys there. Like, I don't think you need to move up. And I just think we've talked all offseason so far about all the holes that this team needs to fill. And I feel like the draft is going to be a perfect place to do that, especially around pick 84. Like, that's where we're getting into, okay, if we need a backup plan at quarterback, this is where we're going to pick a guy like that.
Yes.
If we're thinking about an outside linebacker or an inside linebacker, like, that's where you're starting to think about it too. It just seems a little risky to me, and seems like going all in on. And I mean, is this guy guaranteed to start over Dan Moore? Like, that's the other thing. You know,
I think that's a question there too. Is he a left? Are you just keeping Broderick Jones at right tackle forever? Is that the plan?
Yeah. Yeah, which doesn't. I mean, I don't think that's the most prudent use of Broderick's talents moving forward.
No,
So I don't really know. Like this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I think if you're, I don't know, if you're trading up, it should be trading up higher, and it should be going to get a center. It should be going to get Jackson Powers Johnson. You know, like
I agree.
I think trading up doesn't make sense to me. Just period. And then trading up for an offensive tackle at this point doesn't really make much sense to me either. So I think kind of both those moves, in conjunction, just doesn't look good to me.
I agree. You're giving up way too much. You don't like, that's the thing, is there are minimal concerns that you can fill in the draft. Like the Steelers can go and have a really successful offseason without moving, without doing anything crazy, and just have a really good team, maybe outside of the quarterback position in 2024. Like they don't have that many holes to fill. And if you do them correctly, you could fill all those holes. Like you could go get a center. You could go get an offensive tackle. You can go get a defensive tackle. You could go get a corner and a safety. And I'm sorry, man, but Cooper DeJean would be so freaking cool to cover the second white quarterback or cornerback in the NFL in Pittsburgh. I don't know. It'd be awesome to watch. I think that you have too many options. This draft is deep. Like that's the biggest thing, is it's deep in so many positions that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to fill that there is no need to go get them. Broderick Jones last year made a lot of sense because you were very narrow at your top of the draft. These are guaranteed star offensive tackles, and the Steelers needed an offensive tackle. That one made a ton of sense. You saw, okay, they're cutting them down by the pick here. They're getting real limited. Maybe nobody makes it to 17. Got to go get them at 14. That one made a ton of sense. Here, just like you said, there are options. People are going to fall. You could wait until the second round. Maybe if you're going to get an offensive lineman, there's just no need to go make a splash. And I also agree, if you're going to go make a splash, you go get Jackson Powers Johnson. Like and it's crazy. People are going to be like, you don't trade up for a center. You do if you need a center. Like that's what you go and do. I think that's the only offensive lineman that I'm head over heels you go get if you believe he is your guy. But I just think the board's going to shape out to where the Steelers are going to have so many options at 20. They're not going to have to stress. Like they're not going to have to worry about it. Save your draft picks. That third round pick could be so many things. You could go get another wide receiver. You could go get a corner. You could go get a safety. You could go get inside linebacker. Just like you said, there's just no need to make a move at all. I don't think in my head right now, and unless the draft shapes out differently, I don't think there's a move that I'm willing to make if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers to move up in the first round. Like I don't think there's anybody there that I'm sitting, all right, well, that's the best option. You can't get better than that at 20. I just think this draft is too deep.
Yeah. I think there are way too many options for them to even really consider a trade up seriously. Would you consider maybe like a trade back if they like one of these guys doesn't fall to them? Is that like a possibility either?
See, that I would consider. That I think is a move that you could say, okay, let's get another third round pick. Because you could add another third round pick and move back to 23. You're feeling all right. I mean, you could go get. I moved down here on this draft, but I believe you could go get at 23. You can go get Cooper DeJean. You could go get. You could go get Mims out of Georgia. Like you could go find these guys and say, all right, this is what we're looking for. At this point in the draft, there are just too many options. Like, I mean, you could really get crazy if you wanted to and get a safety, and say, this is the place we're going. I mean, top of the second round, you still got, I mean, Nate Wiggins isn't even expected to go in this draft until 35. Like that's, in my head, that's a starting corner rookie year. Like, I think there are too many options. Trading back makes a lot more sense if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think that's the beauty of this draft, is that you could just let the dominoes fall and say, all right, there's like 10 guys at our draft board that we think will be here at 20 that we feel really confident in. I bet you at least 5 of them are here. And then we just make a decision if one of them's worth taking now, or if we can move back and get somebody. Because I'm sure people are going to be moving up. Like that's just, especially if, I mean, the Steelers could fall into a position where J.J. McCarthy falls or whoever falls. If there's a quarterback at 20, there will be teams that are calling and saying, hey, look, we'll give, and then you're giving up more. Like if you're trying to move up for a quarterback, you're giving up so much more than if you're trying to move up to get an offensive lineman. And that's the beauty of the NFL draft is the Steelers don't have that many holes. And if they fill them, you go get a tackle in free agency or something, you got no worries. Like you're just sitting so pretty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't disrespect J.J. McCarthy like that. I mean, he is going 5th in this mock draft, which I think is it was a trade up to get J.J. McCarthy at number 5, which is one of the wildest things I've seen this offseason so
fast
far.
Fast riser. I saw Jordan Schultz do a whole thing on him the other day about how this dude's going to impress so many people at the combine. And I was just thinking, okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
Good. I can't wait for Drake May to just take over the NFL and just be like, I am the greatest thing of all time.
Future Patriots quarterback, according to this mock draft.
Future Patriots quarterback, which, for you, I'd be happy about. Just, as a football fan in general, that would be so disappointing. Can't it just go to somewhere new? You know what I mean? Go to the Dolphins. I don't even know who's the Commander. Nah, you can't root for the Commanders. That's just a morally incorrect thing to do. They're just, I don't know. I don't have a team, but the Vikings. The Vikings haven't won in a long, long time, if maybe ever. Somebody new. But for you, I'd be happy for that one. Either way, Steelers, I think we're in pretty good agreement right now. No move. Wouldn't make it. That being said, there will be a lot more mock drafts. We'll dive into all of them as they come out, including some of our own as we publish them throughout the offseason with some pretty interesting takes, I believe. We'll be on hand. With that said, we're heading out here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your audio podcasts. We are really pushing those audio downloads, so please make sure to review us, subscribe, download, whatever you got to do on whatever platform you use. We greatly appreciate it. Check out all of our work at allsteelers.com and our pick coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. Blake Hinson continues to just absolutely dominate the floor out there. He's a pleasure to watch. So if you're looking for some March Madness talk, InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Wednesday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.